Perhaps I should start by admitting that, at 72 years old, I have finally understood what it means to be completely alone. And maybe I deserve to be. My name is Robert, and this is not one of those stories where the wise old man teaches life lessons. I am just a man who has failed at everything that mattered, and who, in December 2023, discovered something that still leaves me speechless. When I say that everyone has left me, I am not exaggerating. My wife, Helen, passed away 3 years ago. My children, David and Sarah, barely call me. And when they do, it's just to check if I'm well enough not to be a burden. My grandchildren hardly know who I am. You know that moment when you look around your own home and realize there is nothing left that proves you mattered to someone, that you existed beyond yourself? It was a Thursday when it all began. I was trying to change a light bulb in the kitchen, a simple task I had done for decades, but my vision has been a bit blurry, and I couldn't see where to fit the bulb in the socket. I climbed on a chair, tried again, and, well, the chair gave way. I woke up on the floor with a sore back and a bump on my forehead, and it was there, lying on that cold floor, looking at the kitchen ceiling, that reality hit me like a hammer. If I died at that moment, how long would it take for someone to find out? David lives in Seattle, Sarah in Miami. The neighbors barely wave when they see me. The mailman leaves the letters in the box without even knocking on the door. I got up slowly, wiped the blood from my forehead, and did something I hadn't done in months. I cried. I cried because I was 72 years old and more alone than any human being should be. I cried because maybe I deserved to be. Because I'll be honest with you, I wasn't the best husband. I worked too much, spoke too little, thought that providing financially was enough. I wasn't the best father. Always later, always when things calmed down, always promising time that I never gave. Helen tried to warn me. "Robert, you will regret not being present," she would say. But I thought I had time. I always thought I had time. And now? Now time is all I have, and there's no one left to share it with. I stayed home for 3 days after the fall, eating cereal straight from the box, watching TV shows that didn't interest me, just to hear human voices. Pathetic, maybe. But it was my reality. It was on Sunday that I heard the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone. I never expect anyone. For a moment, I thought about not answering. Who could it be? Someone selling something, probably. Or maybe, could one of my children finally? I opened the door and there he was. A man I had never seen in my life. Short, about 65 years old, thick glasses, kind smile. He was holding a brown paper bag and seemed... I don't know how to explain. It seemed like he had been waiting for me for a long time. "Hello, Robert," he said, as if he had known me for years. "I came to bring you something." I should have found it strange. I should have asked how he knew my name, how he knew where I lived, why he was there. But you know what happens when you've been alone for too long? You start to accept small miracles without questioning too much. "What is it?" I asked. He smiled, a smile that seemed to carry some kind of secret, and said, "Something you lost a long time ago, but you still don't know you lost it." And there, standing at the door of my empty house, looking at that stranger with thick glasses and a mysterious smile, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. For the first time in 3 years since Helen died, I wanted to know what would come next. I didn't know that moment would change everything. I didn't know I would discover, right there at my front door, that God had never abandoned me. He had just changed the address of his angels, but that you will still find out. I invited that stranger in, and now, looking back, I realize it was the first right decision I had made in years. He sat at my kitchen table as if he had been there 1,000 times before. He placed the bag on the table and looked at me for a moment, adjusting his glasses. There was something in that gaze. as if he was seeing things in me that I couldn't even see myself. "You must be wondering who I am," he said, in a calm voice that vaguely reminded me of someone, but I couldn't identify who. "The thought crossed my mind," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. "The truth is that when you live alone for too long, even strangers start to seem like welcome company." He smiled. "My name is Thomas. And before you ask, no, I'm not a missionary. I'm not selling anything, and I didn't come to convert anyone." He paused, looking out the kitchen window. "I just came to return something." It was then that he opened the bag. What came out left me speechless. It was a photo album. Not just any album. It was my album. One I was sure I had lost during the move, 2 years ago, when I sold the big house and moved to this smaller one. "How did you—" I started, but he gently raised his hand. "I found it at the thrift store of the Methodist Church on Elm Street. I recognized you in one of the photos." He opened the album to a specific page. It was a photo of me with Helen from about 20 years ago at a Christmas party. We were smiling. She was wearing that red dress she loved so much. But it wasn't that which caught my attention. It was a folded piece of paper that was between the pages, a letter Helen had written to me that I had never seen. "She must have placed this there for you to find one day," Thomas said, his voice even softer. "Some messages wait for the right moment to be delivered." My hands trembled as I picked up the letter. Helen's handwriting, unmistakable. Date, 3 months before she passed away. "Robert, my love," it began. "If you are reading this, I'm probably in a better place, watching you make that confused face that I love so much. I know you're blaming yourself for not being the perfect husband. I know you're wondering if I was happy. I need you to know. I was. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. You have always been better than you think." I stopped reading because I couldn't see any more through the tears. Thomas stood there, quiet, respecting my moment. When I finally lifted my eyes, he was adjusting his glasses again, and I noticed something strange. He seemed to be crying too. "I'm sorry," I murmured, wiping my face. "I don't usually cry in front of strangers." "Don't apologize," he said. "And maybe I'm not such a stranger after all." There was something in the way he said that which made me look at him more closely. Something familiar that I couldn't identify. But before I could ask, he continued. "Robert, can I tell you something? For years, I walked through this city thinking I knew the people. I thought I knew who was okay, who was struggling, who needed help." He paused, taking off his glasses to clean them. "But you know what I discovered? We only really see when we stop looking only at ourselves." Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. How many times did I walk past neighbors without really seeing them? How many times did I assume I was alone in my pain without thinking that maybe others were too? "Do you know Mrs. Peterson from the blue house on the corner?" Thomas asked. "Just by sight," I replied. "Why?" "She lost her husband last month. She's alone too. Just like Mr. Martinez, 2 houses down from yours. His daughter moved to Texas, and he has no one." Thomas put his glasses back on. Funny how loneliness makes us invisible to one another. I sat in silence, processing this. In 3 years of widowhood, it never occurred to me that there might be others like me, right under my nose. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. Thomas stood up, grabbing the empty bag. "Because sometimes God uses our greatest pains to prepare us for our greatest purpose. And maybe you have something to offer that you don't even know you have." He headed for the door, but turned before leaving. "Oh, Robert, that kitchen light is still out. I can help you change it tomorrow if you'd like. I have a better ladder than that chair." How did he know about the broken light? How did he know about the chair? "Who are you really?" I asked, but he was already on the sidewalk. "Someone who believes you still have a lot to give to the world," he shouted from afar, waving. "And Robert, read the rest of the letter. Helen left more than a message. She left instructions." I stood at the door until he disappeared from sight, holding the album against my chest. When I went back inside, the house didn't feel so empty anymore. For the first time in 3 years, it felt like someone cared that I existed. And even stranger, for the first time, I began to wonder if maybe other people needed to know that they mattered too. Helen's letter had 2 more pages, but this you will discover later. It took me 3 hours to gather the courage to read the rest of Helen's letter. 3 hours sitting in that same kitchen chair, looking at those folded pages as if they were a ticking time bomb. You know why it took so long? Because part of me was afraid of what she might have written. What if there were criticisms I wasn't ready to hear? What if she had used her last words to tell me all the ways I had failed? But when I finally opened the pages, I found something completely different. "Robert," the letter continued, "I know you're wondering what your purpose is now. For 45 years, I watched you search for it in work, in hobbies, even in me. But I never told you where I always knew you would find it. In the people no one else sees." I stopped reading. How could she know exactly what I was feeling? "You have a gift, my love. You always have. Remember when we were young and you always knew when someone was going through a tough time? Remember how you would show up at just the right moment, with the right words, or simply with your presence? You lost that when you started hiding behind work and responsibilities, but it's still there." My hands trembled. I remembered. I remembered how years ago people would come to me, how I seemed to instinctively know when someone needed company, a listening ear, practical help. When did I stop doing that? I have a mission for you, Robert, not a task, a mission. I want you to find 3 people in our neighborhood who are as lonely as you feel right now. I want you to be for them what someone was for you today. My heart stopped. How could Helen know about Thomas? How could she know that someone would show up? And before you ask how I know someone showed up in your life today, because I know someone did. Remember, love doesn't die, my dear. It just changes addresses. Sometimes it lives in letters. Sometimes it lives in strangers with thick glasses and kind smiles. I let the letter fall. I was trembling so much that I could no longer hold it. How was this possible? How could Helen have predicted Thomas with such precision? The last page had a list of names. Start with Mrs. Peterson, blue house on the corner, lost her husband recently. Likes Earl Grey tea and has an orange cat named Whiskers. She's afraid of bothering people, so she never asks for help. Mr. Martinez, 2 houses down from yours. His daughter moved away. He was a math teacher and still has a brilliant mind, but no one wants to hear his stories anymore. Loves chess. And Robert, there's a 3rd name on the list, but you'll only find out who it is when you're ready. How did Helen know all this? How did she know details about neighbors we barely spoke to? But I didn't have much time to process those questions because the doorbell rang again. It was Thomas. He was holding a folding ladder and a tool bag. "I came to help with the light," he said, as if we had made an appointment. "And maybe we can talk about your neighborhood while we work." I let him in again, but this time I was watching everything. The way he knew my house, how he moved with familiarity, how he seemed to know exactly where everything was. "Thomas," I said as he positioned the ladder, "can I ask you a question?" "Sure. Did you know my wife?" He stopped what he was doing and looked at me. For a long moment he was silent, adjusting his glasses. Then he smiled, that same mysterious smile. "Robert, sometimes the people we love find ways to keep caring for us even after they're gone. And sometimes they use other people to do it." It wasn't exactly an answer, but somehow it was all I needed to hear. As he changed the light bulb, I started to tell him about the letter, about Helen's list, about how I felt lost, but at the same time, hopeful. "Mrs. Peterson, Thomas said as he got down from the ladder, "is a lovely lady. Very lonely since she lost Harold. And you're right about Mr. Martinez, a brilliant man who just needs someone to share his stories with. Do you know them?" "I know a lot of people in this town, Robert, but more importantly, they know you. Or at least, they knew the man you used to be, and they've been waiting for him for a long time." After Thomas left, promising to come back the next day, I stood in the kitchen, looking at the new light bulb. The light seemed brighter than any bulb I remembered. It was then that I made a decision. A decision that, looking back, changed everything. I grabbed a cup of tea, Earl Grey as Helen had mentioned in the letter, and walked to the blue house on the corner. When Mrs. Peterson opened the door, her eyes filled with tears. Not because she was sad, but because, in her own words, finally someone saw me. We spent 2 hours talking, 2 hours in which I discovered I was not alone in my grief, in my sense of uselessness, in my fear of bothering others. And for the first time in 3 years, when I went home that night, loneliness no longer suffocated me, because I finally understood what Helen always knew. Sometimes, the cure for our own pain is in helping someone with the same wound. But what I discovered about Mr. Martinez the next day, and who Thomas really was, that will make you question everything you think you know about coincidences. The next morning, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in years: good anxiety. You know that feeling when you have something important to do and can hardly wait to start? I was getting ready to visit Mr. Martinez when Thomas showed up again. This time, he brought a cup of coffee and a chessboard. "I thought you might need an introduction," he said, smiling. "Mr. Martinez can be a bit reserved with strangers." "How do you know he plays chess?" I asked, grabbing my coat. Thomas adjusted his glasses, a gesture I was beginning to notice he made whenever he was about to say something important. "Robert, can I tell you a secret? I didn't just show up in your life by chance, just like you won't show up in Mr. Martinez's life by chance." We stopped on the sidewalk. "What do you mean by that? Do you believe in coincidences?" "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Then let me show you something." We walked to Mr. Martinez's house, a small, well-kept home with a garden that clearly received a lot of love and attention. Thomas knocked on the door with the familiarity of someone who had been there many times before. When the door opened, I saw a man in his 70s, short, with intelligent eyes and a posture that still held the dignity of decades of teaching. "Thomas," he said, and for the first time, I saw a genuine smile light up his face. "Did you bring company?" "Mr. Martinez, this is Robert." "The neighbor we talked about." "Talked about? When had they spoken about me?" "Oh yes," Mr. Martinez said, extending his hand to me. "Thomas told me you might be interested in a game of chess." I looked at Thomas, confused. He hadn't mentioned anything about chess to me. "Don't worry," Thomas whispered as we entered. "Sometimes people know things about us before we even know." Mr. Martinez's house was like a personal museum. Books everywhere, diplomas on the walls, photographs of graduating classes from decades past. But what struck me most was how the house, despite being organized, had that feeling of waiting, as if it was prepared for visits that never came. "Can I offer you some coffee?" he asked, already heading to the kitchen. While he made the coffee, Thomas pulled me aside. "Robert, I need to tell you something. Mr. Martinez is not just lonely. He is giving up." "What do you mean?" "He was one of the best math teachers in this town for 40 years, taught hundreds of students, many of whom became engineers, scientists, important people. But since he retired and his daughter moved away, he started to believe that his life had no meaning." My heart ached. I knew that feeling intimately. "Last night," Thomas continued, "he told me he is considering giving up on everything, stopping eating properly, stopping taking care of the house, stopping living," I completed. "Exactly. And you know what else? You are the first person he has accepted to meet in 6 months. When Mr. Martinez returned with the coffee, and I looked at him with new eyes, I saw the way his hands trembled slightly, how his shoulders seemed to carry the weight of a life he felt no longer had value. "Thomas told me you might like chess," he said, setting up the board. "To be honest, Mr. Martinez, I haven't played in years. I'm probably going to lose badly." He laughed, a sound that seemed rusty from disuse. "You know what I've learned in 40 years of teaching math? It doesn't matter if you lose. What matters is if you're willing to learn." And then we started to play. In the next 2 hours, something magical happened. As we moved the pieces, Mr. Martinez began to tell stories. Stories about students who came to his classes thinking they were dumb at math and left believing they could conquer the world. Stories about how math was really about patterns, and how life itself was about finding patterns of beauty amid the chaos. "You know what hurts me the most?" he said after he checkmated me. He was right. I lost badly. "It's not being alone. It's the feeling that everything I've done, all those classes, all those students, has all been forgotten." It was then that Thomas, who had been quiet the entire game, spoke up. "Mr. Martinez, can I show you something?" He pulled out his phone and started browsing. After a few minutes, he found what he was looking for. "This is David Chen. Do you remember him? Class of '87? Mr. Martinez's eyes lit up. "David, of course I remember. Brilliant kid, but he thought he would never be good enough. He's an aerospace engineer at NASA now. And look at this." Thomas showed an online article where David Chen talked about his career. In the middle of the interview, a quote, "Everything changed when my high school math teacher, Mr. Martinez, told me that math was about finding beauty in patterns. That phrase shaped my entire career." I saw tears in Mr. Martinez's eyes. How did you know this?" he asked Thomas. "Because sometimes it's my job to know," Thomas replied softly. "Just like sometimes it's certain people's job to remind others of who they really are." I looked at Thomas with newfound curiosity. What kind of job was that? "Mr. Martinez," I said, leaning forward, "what would you say if I told you I wanted to learn chess properly, and that maybe we could meet a few times a week?" The smile that spread across his face was like watching the sun rise. "I would say that maybe there's still some purpose in this old teacher." When we left his house 2 hours later, Thomas was unusually quiet. "Thomas," I finally said, "who are you really? And don't give me any mysterious answers this time." He stopped walking and looked at me. Then he took off his glasses, cleaned them carefully, and said, "Robert, what would you do if I told you that for 35 years I worked helping people see better? And that in the last 5 years since I retired, I've found that sometimes people need help seeing more than just physically?" My heart stopped. You were an ophthalmologist?" He smiled, that smile I was learning to recognize as the mark of someone who knew things yet to be revealed. "And Robert? That third name on Helen's list? Are you ready to know who it is?" The answer he gave me changed everything I thought I knew about coincidences, purpose, and how God really works in the world. "The third name," Thomas said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket, "is Thomas Mitchell." I took a moment to process. "But that's your name." He smiled, but this time there was something different about that smile. Something deeper, sadder, more human. "Yes, Robert, it's me." We stood there on the sidewalk, me trying to understand what that meant. "Thomas, I don't understand." He sighed, a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years. "Robert, can I tell you my story? The real story?" I nodded, still confused. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Margaret, to cancer. We had no children. We never could. For 35 years, I was an ophthalmologist in this town. I helped thousands of people see better. But when Margaret died, and when I retired 6 months later, I discovered something terrible. He paused, cleaning his glasses once more. I found out that despite having spent my whole life helping people see physically, I had become blind to everything that really mattered. Blind to the loneliness of the people around me. Blind to my own loneliness. My heart began to race. I was starting to understand. On the first Christmas after Margaret's death, I was exactly where you were a week ago. Alone, without purpose, questioning whether my life had meaning. What happened? A neighbor showed up at my door. An elderly woman I barely knew. She brought an apple pie and stayed with me all night just talking. Later I found out she was also alone, that she had also recently lost her husband. Thomas looked up at the sky, as if reliving that night. It was that night I understood something, Robert. I understood that God doesn't abandon people. He just uses other people to take care of them. And that perhaps my purpose was no longer to help people see physically, but to help people like me see other possibilities. So you started to... Yes, I started looking for people like us. People who were invisible in their pain. And I found that there were dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. All thinking they were alone when, in fact, they were surrounded by others who felt exactly the same way. He pulled out another piece of paper from his pocket, a handwritten list. This is my list, Robert. In the last 2 years, I helped connect 47 people in this city. People who thought their lives were over and discovered that, in fact, their most important lives were just beginning. I looked at the list. Names, addresses, small notes about each person. Widow for 6 months, likes gardening. Retired, was an engineer, misses being useful. Lost adult child, isolated from family. Thomas, this is incredible. No, Robert, this is necessary. And do you know why you are on my list? I shook my head. Because Helen reached out to me. The world stopped. What did you say? Thomas smiled. That smile that I now recognized as the smile of someone who carries precious secrets. 3 months before Helen died, she came to see me in my office. She said she was worried about you, that she knew you would isolate yourself after her death, that you would lose your sense of purpose. She asked me to take care of you when she was gone. My legs almost gave way. I had to lean against a post. Helen planned all this. Helen loved you enough to make sure you wouldn't be lost forever. She gave me the photo album 3 months before she died. She told me about Mrs. Peterson, about Mr. Martinez. She made me promise that I would show up in your life at the right time. Tears came without warning. Why didn't she tell me? Because you needed to discover for yourself that you still had something to offer the world. You needed to choose to connect, not be forced to. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Me, processing everything. Him, waiting patiently. Thomas, I finally said, why were you on Helen's list? Why are you the third name? Because, Robert, in the last 2 years, while helping other people, I started to lose myself again. I began to feel like an instrument, you know? Useful to others, but not really connected. And Helen somehow knew that helping you would help me too. How so? Because for the first time in 2 years, I am not just someone who helps. I am someone who is also helped. For the first time, I am not just the Thomas who shows up at others' doors. I am the Thomas who also needs friends, who also needs renewed purpose, who also needs to remember that he is not alone. And it was then that I fully understood. Helen hadn't just orchestrated my healing. She had orchestrated the healing of all of us. Mrs. Peterson, who now had someone to care for, me. Mr. Martinez, who now had someone to teach, me. Thomas, who now had a real friendship, not just a mission, me. And I, who discovered that my purpose was not in being successful or admired, but in being necessary for others who needed to be seen. Thomas, I said, wiping my eyes, what do we do now? He smiled, and for the first time, It was a smile completely free of mystery. Now, Robert, we do what Helen always knew we would do. We take care of each other, and we find other people to care for. And we create a family that has nothing to do with blood and everything to do with choice. I looked around our neighborhood, the same houses that for 3 years felt like backdrops of loneliness. Now they felt full of possibilities. There are more people like us out there, aren't there? Robert, Thomas said, placing his hand on my shoulder, there is a whole world of people like us. People who think they have been forgotten, when in fact they are just waiting for someone to remind them that they are seen. Yeah, and in that moment, standing on the sidewalk with my new friend, my angel disguised as a retired ophthalmologist, I finally understood what Helen always knew. God never abandoned me. He just changed addresses. And the new address? It was the hearts of the people he put in my path to remind me that I was never, ever truly alone. But what happened next? What we built together? That will show you how a life can begin again at 72. 6 months after that conversation on the sidewalk, I am sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I almost gave up on everything. But now, it no longer accommodates just one person. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m., my home fills with voices. Mrs. Peterson always arrives first, bringing her Earl Grey tea and stories about whiskers. Mr. Martinez comes right after, carrying his chessboard and always a new story about some former student who ran into him by chance. Thomas? Thomas has become my family. Not brother, not father, not son. Something new, something that has no name in Portuguese, but means the person God placed in your life to remind you of who you really are. But today is special. Today we have visitors. Robert, Mrs. Peterson says, serving tea for everyone. Tell them how it all began. They are 5 new people. People that Thomas and I found in the past few weeks. A retiree who lost his wife. A teacher who feels forgotten. A man who isolated himself after the death of his adult son. A woman whose children moved to another state. A widower who thought his life was over. I look around the table. 8 people who, 6 months ago, thought they were alone in the world. And now? Now we are a family. Well, I begin, adjusting my glasses. Yes, I discovered that I also needed glasses, and Thomas insisted on being my ophthalmologist even in retirement. It all started the day I found out that not everyone who leaves us really abandons us. I tell the whole story, the album, the letters, Helen's list, how Thomas showed up, how we discovered that we were all connected by something greater than ourselves. What impresses me the most, says Sarah, the new retired teacher, is how you all managed to find each other. I mean, what an incredible coincidence. Thomas and I exchange glances and smile. Sarah, Thomas says, can I tell you a secret? It wasn't a coincidence. At least not in the way you imagine. He stands up and walks to a folder he brought today. For the past 6 months, Robert and I have made an interesting discovery. We found that in every block of this city, in every block of any city, there are at least 3 people like we used to be. Invisible people in their pain. He opens the folder and shows maps.